after today, a copy of this webinar will be available to you on the Blackboard community area for placement students. So if you don't make any notes, don't panic, you can see that later. Or if your friends have missed it, again, they can look at it later. So first of all then, a bit of a recap about what you need to do for the 1st of September. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you hit the deadline. So what you have to do by the 1st of September is to update your CV ready to be sent out for placements. Now, the CV that you submit on the 1st of September isn't going to be the final version of your CV. You are allowed to update it later, and good CV practice is that you tailor your CV for every job. But what the school wants to know is that each of you have got a good CV which they're confident will get you a placement. And also in some cases the school will submit your CV through to placements on your behalf, so they need to have a good copy on file. So you submit that to your school using Blackboard, and I will show you where that area is later on in this webinar. So that's your task really for the summer. So I thought I'd first of all see where you're up to with actually putting your CV together. So a quick question. So in terms of updating your CV ready for placement, how many of you are nearly finished and you're just really kind of polishing up your CV and getting it ready? How many of you have maybe half completed your CV? It's sort of nearly there. And how many of you are kind of just getting started? Okay. So you know, obviously you've just finished your semester, and so I'm not going to tell you if you've not started working on it yet. But what I would say is now's a good time to start getting your CV in some kind of shape, because the time is going to fly this summer. So that's good to know that a number of you have already nearly finished it. So hopefully what I'll tell you today will help you to kind of get it up to that next level. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a CV, and we're going to use that to run through to highlight best practice. Now, you can access a copy of this CV through the handouts option on your dashboard if you'd like. I've also put copies of the slides there in case you want them later as well. But what I'm going to do is find the CV. Okay, so this here is a CV which is based on a right, hold on a second. Bear with me, 1 minute. Okay, let me just close this call. Right, I must admit, this is the first time I've used this system, so if it's a bit wonky to start off with, it's a bit like your first driving lesson. Okay, right, so this is the CV here. So at the top of your CV, you're going to put your name. In terms of your name, you don't have to put your full name. So I'm not going to put on mine Suzanne Jane Creever. Just your first name and your surname, just so the employer knows what to call you when you go for interview. In terms of addresses, this CV's got 2 addresses there. Again, this is up to you, but essentially on a CV, you want to put the contact address there for this application. If you're going to be in a student residence or a residence in Manchester somewhere next year and you're not quite sure about the post going astray, you might want to put a second address on there. What you also need to put on there are your email address, and it's a really good idea to use the professional email address there. So either use your uni one if you use that account, or set yourself up with a professional sounding Hotmail account, not the fun one you use for everything. Also, it's a good idea to include a telephone number, a mobile telephone number as well. Now, in this example here, you can see that the number is all concatenated. It's a good idea with mobile phone numbers and landlines to put spaces in the phone number so that it makes it easy when they're ringing you to invite you to interview. My tip of where to put that space is imagine you'll give the number verbally, and where you stop for breath, that's where you put your space. So 0121 space, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, on the CV that you need to submit to your school, you need to include a personal statement. Now, typically, personal statements are really optional on CVs, but for your placement CV, your school would like you to include one. And what the personal statement is your opportunity to say a little bit more about the kind of placement you're interested in. Now, when you come to submit your CV for the 1st of September, the chances are that you're not actually at the stage of applying for a placement yet, because the placement you want might not be advertised, so that might be a bit more generic. But it's a good idea, even at that stage, to start tailoring it to the kind of experience that you're looking for. Now, this example here on this CV is a little bit too generic. A history student could have written this. There's nothing specific about it. So what skills in particular are you looking to put into practice on your placement? Think about what your objective is for doing placement year. Maybe you are thinking about a research career, or maybe something else where that work experience on your placement is going to be crucial to get you the job that you want. And try to avoid platitudes like being a hard-working, motivated student. I know that you all are, but so is everybody. So think about something that's unique to you, and maybe give a little bit of brief evidence about that supports how you can actually prove that in practice. Now, on the Blackboard placement students area, there are some examples of CVs on there, each with personal statements, and you can look at that to get some inspiration. And again, I'll show you that towards the end of the webinar, so you can go and have a browse if you've not found it already. So some kind of personal statement, you can even call it an objective, or whatever you like, but something that starts to kind of focus the reader on the purpose of your CV. The next main section on your CV is going to be your education section. And a couple of things to highlight here. Now, in this example here, you can see that the size of the subheading for education is exactly the same size as the text for the university and the degree title. It's a really good idea on a CV to make your headings distinct, so that when someone looks at your CV, they can see the sections instantly, rather than just being one great big list of information. So find some way of making your headings stand out a bit more. Make them a bit bigger, capitalise them, underline them. Don't do all three at once because it looks really weird. But find some way of actually making it look on a page that you've got sections. The title of the university, as I'm told all the time, is the University of Manchester. So if you want to keep the university happy, put the at the front. And you don't need to put UK there unless you're going to be applying for placements overseas. With your dates for your degree, you don't need to put September or anything there. Just put the to from dates. And what you're going to do is the year you started, but you're also going to put the year that you intend to graduate, not to present. You're not going to be here forever resitting. So that's what employers expect to see there. And also double check, because this is a really easy mistake to make. We see this all the time. This person here's put BSc Honours degree with industrial experience, but a degree in what? So that's why it's a good idea to always proofread. Then we've got the person here has listed their modules. Now there's lots of different ways to actually list what you've done on your degree, and this is just one way of doing it. Now you might see placement CVs like this from previous students, because at one stage this is how the university told you to do it. In practice, this looks really good. If, like this candidate, you've got some really good marks for your first year. But it doesn't actually give you space really to highlight some of the skills or other kind of things you want to sell about your course on your CV. So again, on the placement student area, which I'll show you in a while, there's different ways that you can tackle this. So rather than listing it year 1, year 2, you could maybe put first year units include, and then maybe snake them across the screen, and then you might put a bit about what second year units might include. There's lots of abbreviations on your course: RSMs, Research Skills Module, EDMs, the Experimental Design Module. Some employers won't know what these are, so it's a good idea to actually put these out in full. And in some cases, what you might want to do is say a little bit more about what those are if you think it will have impact your CV. Now this student here did a first year tutorial project. This is a really nice thing to highlight on your CV because it's evidence of group work, getting involved with the community. But what you need to do is write it from the perspective so you can show why it's adding value to your CV rather than just something that happened to you. So what would be good on this CV if this person has said exactly how they contributed in this tutorial group. Maybe they helped design the workshop itself or actually ran it in the class. How many people were they working with on this project? What mark did they get? The fact that you've got to do a presentation as part of that tutorial module as well is a good thing to highlight. So it's thinking about the outputs, the kind of so what reasons why you put this evidence on your CV. So when you write about your degree, it's not just about your modules, but about the actual skills from study as well that show how you actually apply your science in the workplace. Okay, so you're going to put your degree there, and then you're going to put your kind of high school or equivalent qualifications. Now, in terms of the space you allocate for this, you're going to put the most space for your degree, because that's your most important qualification, and less space for your pre-university qualifications. Now, on this example, the person has listed all their GCSE results. It probably does their heart really good to see all those A stars there, but most employers will just want to know that you've got a lot of A stars. They're not really that bothered about the individual subjects. So in this case, this person can summarise just 9 A stars, 1 A, including maths and English, and that would be sufficient. You do need to give a level of detail, though, for your A levels and AS levels, though. Another good thing to highlight in your CV are things like your awards, achievements, and positions of responsibility. This actually is another common mistake, spelling responsibility wrong. Again, that's why it's always a good idea to go back and do a double spell check after you think you've got your CV perfect, because these things sometimes get through spell checks, or if you switch off your spell check because it annoys you. That's what I do in my case. So think about what you can offer here, because again, employers are going to look for people who've actually done something apart from study, and think about what this actually adds to your CV. Now, in this case, this person is going to be a past leader this year, so that's good, a past mentor. But again, employers might not know what that means, so you might want to put a bit of explanation behind it. This person also was a life science ambassador. Again, someone outside the university might not know what that entails, and again, you might want to make more of that. And also, being a life science ambassador is a paid job, and so you could even put that under your work experience if you wanted to. So it's about making the most of what you've got on your CV and expanding where it's going to add value. If you go into page 2 of the CV, you've got some work experience here. So, and the thing is that all work experience is valuable, because even though it might not be directly related to science, it shows that you've held down a job, you've been responsible, you've managed that job alongside study, which shows time management and prioritisation skills. Now, when you write about your work experience, a real common trap to fall into is to talk about the duties of what you had to do rather than what you actually did. So, in this situation here, you don't need to write things like, at Wootton House I gained the following skills and experience, because that's repeating the name of the hotel, and actually it's not really adding any value, it's just taking up space in your CV. Instead, focus on what you achieved. Now, what's nice about this is that they've highlighted some skills which they think might be relevant to the job they're going for, but you need to write about it in a slightly different way. If you take the example for teamwork, it states that this is key for work in a complex environment. Well, duh. Okay, what would be much better there is if this person gave an example that proves their teamwork skills. Maybe that they worked with a team of 5 people on a complex event, you know, working under pressure or organising tasks or whatever. That would give me some evidence that you can perform well in that skill. Customer service is obviously the ability to recognise customers' needs and requirements. How can you prove to me in that job that you've demonstrated it? And so it's not just about what you've done, but what you did in that job, which shows the way that you work, which tells me, as a potential placement supervisor, how you're going to perform in my company, in my lab. Again, it's other work experiences on here. This person's included some work experience they did while they're at school. And again, it's with jobs like this sometimes, you know, some work experience you're allowed to do stuff and some you're not, you're just watching what's going on. And if you're in that situation, then what you do is you write about insight gained. So you might not have actually had any practical experience at that job, but you gained insight from watching other people do it. So that's another angle that you could use when you talk about your work experience. Then we have further down a skills section. Again, another good section for a CV. And what you need to do here is really make sure your science skills are on here if you're going for a lab placement. It's amazing how many people miss it off. And it's a balance of things. So what's nice here is they've emphasised that they've got a good understanding of working safely and accurately within a lab. They've highlighted that they've got high marks in their first year for laboratory assessments, which is comforting to me. But what they could do there is maybe specify some of the things that they've done. So gel electrophoresis, think about all the things that you've done in your first year labs, but also look ahead and think about the things you're going to be doing in your second year labs that you'll be equipped to do by the time you do your placement. So make sure you have your specific laboratory skills in there as well. But it's not just about laboratory skills, it's also about your IT and data handling skills as well. And you really must put your data handling module on your CV. First of all, if you passed it, you've got a cracking good mark. But secondly, whenever we talk to placement students about the interviews, they mention that they get asked about, if it's on their CV, employers will ask about it. They're very interested in data. The whole issue about data management within life sciences is a big area at the moment. There was a report published by the Association of the British Pharmaceutical Industries last autumn, and it highlighted things like data handling, mathematical skills. There's a real shortage of that within the sector, and they're looking for graduates who have those skills. If you can highlight that ability on your CV, you're really going to stand out, so make the most of things like that. So instead of emphasising that you can use Microsoft Word, which most people can, or PowerPoint, again, with PowerPoint, it's one of those weird words with capitals in the middle, so it's PowerPoint with a capital P for point. You know, highlight the data handling skills instead that you gain from the module, or if you've got advanced Excel skills or database skills. With language skills, what this person's done here, which is pretty good, is they've highlighted their actual immediate skills there. They're not just that they can speak Spanish, but actually qualified the level to which they can speak Spanish. And then also, this is a good place to put things like your driving licence or all the kind of qualifications that don't actually fit anywhere else on your CV. Okay, so then we've also got activities and interests. On here, again, another good section, because some of you are going to have lots of work experience on your CV, maybe weekend jobs and what have you, maybe working while you've been studying. And some of you are going to have more things to write about on the activities and interest part of your CV. But again, you know, whether this can be a really good way of demonstrating some of those skills that you might have gained within a job, but within a different kind of setting. So this person here was a member of the University of Manchester Dance Association. If you're a member of any kind of society or group, but actually getting involved with organising events or helping out at freshers or welcome week, sorry, I can't call it freshers anymore, or any kind of activities like that, it's really worth emphasising. And also quantifying. You know, if I don't go to Manchester University, I don't know how big the Dance Association is. I could think it's 8 students in a gym somewhere on a Friday afternoon, and that might not realise that actually it's 300 members strong, and they're entering national competition and classes and all that kind of stuff. So again, if you want employers to be impressed about things, you need to let them know why it's impressive. At the end of your CV, you're going to put your references, which will be your personal advisor, and then the address to give is basically care of the placement office at the university. So that's what you need to put there for your references at the end. If you have got work experience that's relevant, you could also put a second reference on there as well. So maybe this summer, if you've managed to get yourself some lab experience, obviously it's a good idea to maybe see if you can get your kind of lab supervisor there also to offer a reference as well, because that looks really good. Okay, so that's the whistle-stop tour of that CV. We've not got any questions so far. I hope you're still awake. You're still with me? It's very weird, you know, actually talking to a computer, not seeing real people. So that essentially is what you're going to do for your CV. What I'm going to do now is just show you where there are some additional resources that you can use. Again, if you've got any questions as we go through, just ask away. So I'm just going to nip across now into the internet. So if you kind of just highlight a few things for you. So this is obviously the Careers Service website. And under our applications and interviews sections there's a whole section on CVs, and there's all sorts of stuff in there that will help you. You'll find links there to handouts. There's also some example CVs in that section, including one for a biochemist. And there's also links there to the My Learning Essentials modules on the library website, which again talks a bit more about structuring your CV and tailoring your CV. So, you know, those are general resources that you can take advantage of. Also, as well as on our website, you've got some specific resources just for you as life science students on Blackboard. So when you log into Blackboard, if you go down to the community area, you should have access to the placement students area. So let's just go into there. And you can see there's a folder specifically for placement students. So in here, we've got a whole range of resources for you. And there's also copies of some presentations there as well that have been podcasted. So if we go into writing a placement CV, you can see here lots of resources to help you. This webinar, if it records okay, will be saved on this website here. But there's also, again, links there to relevant parts of the University Career Service website. There's some videos to watch as well, where real employers tell you what they look for in CVs. And to be honest, no matter what the sector is, at the end of the day, employers want CVs which are targeting their job, that show an interest in their organisation, and that they can find the skills easily on that CV. There's also some guidance here about how to write about your course and different ways of actually writing about the same kind of results, just to give you some ideas. And there's also a useful section here about how to write about your skills. So how can you put teamwork and communication into your CV without just writing the word teamwork? Now, in the CV handout, there's lots more advice on techniques you can use to actually get skills into your CV with evidence. But there's a really good idea here that is mentioned, which is how you can write about your skills in a positive way. And that's about, so think about how you use that skill for a certain purpose to achieve a certain outcome. And if you have that in the back of your mind when you write about things, it's a really good way to actually put your laboratory skills or transferable skills in a really kind of positive way. There's also a whole section on here about how to write personal profiles, including some examples. So again, that will give you some ideas if you've been kind of wondering how on earth to write your personal profile without it sounding like a Miss World statement. And then also on here, there's a really useful section where you can access some CVs from previous placement students. We've also included one that a student used to apply for a non-laboratory placement as well. And if you click into these, you've got CVs there where you can get ideas of how people have written about their own written their personal statements and written about the skills and experience. So again, you can use those to get inspiration for your CV. When you get to that stage, there's also some examples of covering letters as well. So again, you've got some resources there that will really help you to make a good job of your own CV. Okay. Right, so I'm just going to check because I've just had a question come in. So bear with me, just have a quick read of the question. Okay, so the question that I've had is about how you show the modules that you've taken last year and this year. Is it better to show it as a table or to show it as first year modules include? Now this really depends. Now if you've decided that you've set your heart on applying to the Mayo Clinic for a placement, in the past the Mayo Clinic have given the school good feedback on the CV layout which lists the modules in that way. But there are lots of different ways of actually laying your CV out, so don't feel you have to do it in that way. If you like the candidates I showed you on their CV, you've got loads of really strong marks, then that way of showing your modules looks really good. But if you've got a bit of a mixture of results, you might not want to put them all on there. And you don't have to list all your modules anyway. You can just pick out the ones that you want to highlight for the course. So don't feel that you've got to list everything. So what I would do is look at what your results were for last year, think about the kind of placement you're going for, and then choose a format which best sells your skills. You know, so you might list your modules according to the marks that you got or the relevance to the kind of project that you're going for. And remember, of course, the CV that you submit in September isn't going to be the only version of the CV that you can use for placement. You are allowed and in fact actively encouraged to update it later. So you submit your CV in September and then maybe around about November time you get a really good placement come through. You can go back and update your CV to tailor it specifically for that placement and then send that off. So at this stage, maybe have a play around with some of the formats I've shown you today, but remember you can actually change that later as well. So it really is up to you. You know, have a go and see what, you know, you might, maybe for example, like the student's CV I showed you, you did one of those tutorial projects in your first year and it went really well, and you really want to write about it because you think it's a really great evidence for your CV, you might find that you haven't got room to list all your modules anyway in that format. So I suppose it's a case really of getting everything on your CV first, and then just kind of deciding, you know, whether some sections you might want to condense down, or some questions you might want to make a little bit bigger. Hopefully that's answered the question. It depends, really. It's a bit of a politician's answer there, isn't it? But both, there's no right or wrong way. It's about thinking, what have I done, and what's the best way of presenting that for the job I'm applying for. Okay. Right, so I'm just going to just go back to the slides now. Okay, so resources to help you. I've just shown you the placement students area on Blackboard, which has got lots of resources in there, and also where you can find example CVs. And I've also shown you the relevant pages on the Career Service website. Now, over the summer, the atrium is open every day. I think the opening hours are from 10 till 4. So if you're still around Manchester and you're working on your CV and just want to get some feedback on it, it's a really good idea just to book an appointment to see an applications advisor, just to get some face-to-face feedback on that. If you're not in Manchester, we have other ways that you can get feedback on your CV as well. If I just nip across back to the internet again, on the Career Service page, you've got an option, Get Advice here, and this tells you more about the Applications Advice service here. You can actually book appointments for application advice in a number of different ways. You can either ring us up in office hours and book an appointment, or you can do it yourself 24/7 using Careers Link, and that's quite easy to do that. So you've got that option if you're in Manchester. If you're not in Manchester, then we have a service called Help by Email, and what you can do is email your CV into our resource centre in the atrium, and then what they will do is give you some feedback on your CV as well. So if you really are stuck and need some support with your CV, then that service is open to you as well. However, what I would really suggest that you do is talk to your personal advisor. That person's going to be writing a personal statement. This is a really good way. Certainly if you have not really got to know your personal advisor that well last year, to kind of let them know the kind of things you're interested in, and get some advice from them on what they think would needs to go in your CV, and they could perhaps maybe suggest things that you maybe missed off from an academic or a module kind of basis, maybe laboratory skills which could be important for the kind of placement you're going for. So it's a real good idea to actually go and talk to your personal advisor as well. As I said, you've got help from the Career Service as well, but you've got a real good resource there within your school. Your personal advisor has probably been the personal advisor to other people who've had placements in the past. There probably are a mine of untapped information there, so go and track them down. All I really would say about this, though, is that I can tell you now, looking outside at Manchester, it doesn't look very sunny, but it is the summer, and academic staff will go on holiday at some stage. And so it's probably a good idea, if you're sort of at the halfway stage of doing your CV, where you want to get some feedback, is to maybe try and contact them now, before they disappear after conferences and wherever, to get some feedback on your CV so that you feel confident you can complete it and submit it on time for the 1st of September. So obviously you're keen to get started with this because you're here today, and that's amazing to see, but you know, I really would sort of get it done and dusted as soon as possible, and then you can enjoy the rest of your summer. Okay, so thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. Just before I kind of close the webinar down, if you have any final questions, you can just type them into that window. Alternatively, if you wanted to contact me, you can contact me through we have a Facebook group for life science students, and what I'll do is I'll email this out to you after the webinar, or alternatively you can email me direct. My email address is suzanne.creever@manchester.ac.uk. Like other members of staff, I'm going on holiday this summer, and I'm going away for a couple of weeks in August. So if you do want feedback on your CV, the best thing to do probably is to go to your personal advisor and then go to the Careers Service. But if you have got any questions as well, I'm happy to try and deal with them as we go along. I'm just hoping that I don't get sent 50 CVs. Okay, well, thank you for listening. good luck with writing your placement CV. Have a great summer, and I'll see you all in September. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I've nearly went then. I've just noticed I've got one last question. Bear with me. Let me just see the question. Okay. Right. Okay. Question 2. Okay. So I've had a question here about how important lab work experience is. Is it mandatory that you get some experience? Obviously, it's a bit late now in the summer to get some work experience. What could you do to try and do this? Well, it is, if you have got external laboratory work experience to put on your CV, not just what you've done in university labs, it will make a huge difference, both in terms of you deciding what you want to do for your placement, but also making you stand out for the students. As you know, it is, you know, July time. What do you need to do about that? I think what you have to do is sort of be creative. So first of all, think about where you're living now. We have on our website a section on looking for work experience, and there's a handout there that's called Looking for Work Experience for Life Science Students. So I think the first thing I'd do is maybe have a look at that handout. The second thing I'd do is think, well, do I know of any kind of businesses in the area where I live? It's sometimes a really good idea to ask family and friends if they're aware of any laboratories or in the area where you could maybe approach for work experience. And what I would do, because you've got a limited time frame, is you have to be a bit more kind of open to what you might accept. So any experience in a high volume laboratory, whether it's clinical or environmental or whatever, is going to be a good experience for your CV. So if there is an environmental testing lab just down the road from where you live, and the beauty of Google is you can usually find these things somewhere, then you've got nothing to lose by actually contacting them speculatively to see whether they have any opportunities of work experience. It might be that they might not be able to give you any structured work experience, but you may be able to negotiate maybe a few days work shadowing just to get a feel for what the job's about. And once you're there, you might be able to persuade a few more days out of them, or you might not be able to. It depends what they're like doing over the summer. But sometimes it's really worth trying that speculative approach to actually find work experience. What I'll do when I email you as well is we have a really good blog post which is called "Where Are All the Science Jobs?" And that gives you, again, some of the strategies for spotting these little companies and thinking about what your approach is going to be to actually get work experience. So you might be lucky and find something over the summer. You know, I'll never say never, because I've seen students who manage to do it, you know, suddenly out of the blue. But I think what I do is have a look at that handout, go and talk to people, and talk to everybody, because sometimes the best contacts come from the most unexpected sources. It might not be someone who actually works in a technical company who has a good source. It might be a friend that you know from a SASTI job whose brother works somewhere else but knows someone who works in the lab. So tell everybody about the kind of things you're looking for, because you might find something that way. But also use some of the strategies in the handout that are also in this blog post, which I'll send to you as well. Okay, well, I'm going to call it a day now on this. As I said, if you've got any further questions, I'm happy for you to email me direct or use a Facebook group. And as I said, I'll send you some information after this webinar today if you have got other questions to ask. Okay, cheerio.